like to start changing gears. And start off firstly by recognizing what you said, Hunter, that I think the word you used is tired of talking about this drama. That's cool, that's where you're at. And like, honestly, like, I think I had a little bit of that attitude going into the temple meeting that we had of, is this just going to be more talking and going nowhere? But like, to be real with y'all, like being on the phone for the last meeting was really hard. I didn't think that meeting was gonna happen until me and Max got home, and it was really like just not good to be on the phone for that. It sucked, honestly, and it felt really awkward. So I didn't really have the space to say anything. I think we do need to talk about this more, because I care about this community, and because I genuinely care about how everybody else is doing and going through this transition, and really understanding and like, what is the basis for all of this? What are we doing? What have we been doing? What do we think we're doing? And what are we actually going to do? The way I see it, is that, like, not the way I see it, the way I feel it, I don't feel comfortable with love asking Sebastian to leave. I don't feel, that's true. I don't feel comfortable in a community that agreed upon the basis of trust, and that not existing anymore, and everyone just sitting by and letting that happen, myself included. I am not excluding myself from any of these reflections. I personally have just been like going through a lot of interpersonal stuff, like almost at the exact same time as all of this community stuff has happened. So I think like my internal exploration was taking so much of my ability to be present, that when all of this communal stuff was happening, I did just want to like get away, and just, I had so much to deal with on my own. And I realized that like I got to the point of dealing with my stuff to see that part of my stuff is not feeling empowered to like stand up and like and be fully in this community, and like have that, honestly, the vulnerability to have a voice. For me, like, it's confusing to say, but to put myself out there, and that's what I'm doing right now, putting myself out there, just gonna like speak my mind, and like I understand that maybe everybody will disagree with me, and that's completely okay, but like, if Sebastian has to leave, in my heart, celebration is over. And I'm not saying celebration as a living situation that grows food and does beautiful art and like has parties and things like that, but I mean like the heart of the spiritual work that we're all doing here. And like I have no like plans for my life. Like, I have no career goals. I have no interest, essentially, in going out into the world and doing anything besides what I have always envisioned celebration to be in that eco-village. Or not even in future tense, like right here, what we're doing now, doing the work and meditating together and like being on this planet as human beings and figuring out what the fuck that means to all of us. Like, that's the only place that I really want to put my energy into, and like that's the only place I can like imagine raising a child, and like imagine like fucking putting my life into an organization that is not, it's a family, you know? And like all of that becomes completely void and null, and like it doesn't work for me, it doesn't work for my heart if this situation essentially is going in the way that we left it at the end of the last meeting. Like, we need to continue looking at this, and like we need to continue confronting this, and like each of us learning, and like not making it about a Sebastian and Love thing. Like, this is not a Sebastian and Love thing, this is a community thing, and each of us can learn a lot about how we are showing up to this conflict. And like I realized that like I was taking a bystander. I was like, this isn't my thing, like I don't have the space to talk, this isn't like everything's being said that I would maybe say, you know? And like I wasn't taking like accountability or like full identity as like a leader in this community. And what we all need to be doing is that liminal leadership. All of us are leaders in this circle. All of us need to speak, especially when something like this is happening, especially when someone is like it, when two people are considering leaving because they can't live together, you know? Like that's like the entire world out there is a mess because people can't figure out how to live with each other, you know? And like this is not me like taking any action one way or another, but like I'll just be like super clear. Like, I can't envision myself being in this community past the end of this year or like much sooner than that, you know, if we can't like work through this problem in a way that feels good in my heart, you know, in a way that like I think the vibes I've been feeling this whole week at both houses is like separation. And I have fully, like I said in my check-in, I've been taking that for myself and doing that for myself, and like I have been respecting everyone else who needs to do that. Like, I'm not saying that it's bad that we've all been taking our space, but I think that's coming from this like open wound that's just like being walked around, and like the elephant in the room. You know, like this is, and I spoke to Julian about this briefly, I guess yesterday, is like, I'm not worried about filling Sebastian's spot. Like, it's not about like the room or like having new energies come in, because that has happened. It's been beautiful. It will always happen in a community, having those energy shifts and things. But like somebody leaving in the way that like, you know, Megs is leaving versus the way that Sebastian would be leaving is a huge difference. And that makes all the difference to me. I don't know what I feel about the virus as anything other than a test for me, personally, for each of us here, for each individual, a test, you know? A test to see how we react to this worldwide phenomenon. I'm not like scared of getting it, or anything, but I'm viewing like it's this intense pressure. It just manifested as a virus, but it's this intense and unignorable pressure that has just occurred on this earth. This earth mother has given us this test to go through, each of us. And like as a community, this is the make or break. This is when we have this opportunity to level up and like really embody and like live all the things that we are talking, and live what we feel in our hearts. Or we can continue grasping on to the way that we've always lived, and by grasping on, it'll crumble into our hands, and I'm not going to stick around and watch that happen. I'm either going to be here and I'm going to fight until the very end, and I'm going to make sure that this place embodies what I think it has the potential to, or like out into the unknown, and that's good too for me. So that's the thing. And the last thing I want to say, and I really just realized this super recently, like probably yesterday, I think, but you know, like my relationship with you, love, throughout all of this, I feel like has deepened. Like I feel like you have opened up, and I understand you, maybe even slightly, but like more than I did before, you know, really. And like I heard your voice, and I was really happy to. Out here, like even when you raised your voice, I was like, damn, oh my god. You know, go off on Sebastian. If he's yelling, you yell right back at him. Go ahead. But I feel I need to publicly repent because I made a mistake by consenting to let Sebastian leave the meeting and have that letter read without him in the presence. I know I made it clear that I didn't want that to happen, and I know he made the decision to leave completely on his own. But like looking back, I feel like it was a horrible decision, collectively. And I felt in that moment that I wanted to support love in being able to express certain reflections that usually we don't get to hear. But now I realize is like if it's not a reflection to the actual person being reflected on, it really isn't. It's almost like it's almost vulnerable, but it's not, you know. And then it just creates this like really isolating, you know, this destructive kind of event that I feel occurred through that. You know, like if you have reflections on a person, but you can't look them in the eye and sit there and tell them, I don't think good came out of it in this situation. I can't say if there was ever good in it. And all of this, you know, stems from me feeling that I didn't realize this, like I said, till yesterday, but this is something that, love, I think this is your year. This is your year to see this really deeply in whatever way that makes sense to you. But like I'll echo what me and Lydia sent, and that you accepted the cue for growth is avoidance of reflection, of interpersonal reflection, you know. And that was specifically with your relationship with Hunter and the way that it affected other people. But in this situation, it's your relationship with Sebastian and other people. And like, I'm not saying for you to believe a single word, a single syllable that anybody else says about you. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that I don't feel, not that you're not trying, but like I don't feel the trust in the collective to reflect back on you, you know. And it's just that. And I will take you up. I do want to go through the Enneagram because I know you offered that, and I thought that was a super reasonable thing. So I would love to do that just to like learn more about you on my own, with you from your own words, you know. But like, this is all a convoluted way to say that like, trust. Like, I don't know where that's playing in this situation, and if we can't identify it today, tomorrow, soon, then I don't know how celebration is going to have a foundation. Because love and trust are the same. Love and trust are like synonyms on the spiritual level. Not obviously linguistically, but on the spiritual level, it is. I guess that's all I'd like to say. I know it was a lot. I don't. And let's go from there. That's all I want to say.
I just wanted to ask a simple question. I never stay with what you're saying, Max. In regards to you, love, when you're saying that you're always in the middle, I wonder if it's the middle or is the gray area.
Well, see, you and I just look at it completely different. So
well, I'm just throwing a question. Yeah. I'm just throwing a question. If you get reactive about it, it's your thing. But I'm just saying, like, if you're not certain about things, you know, how are you ever going to get certainty? And if 7 people unanimously are reflecting back at you, yes, we have seen these patterns in you, and we have checked what the Enneagram is saying, and we feel it goes along with you. What's the problem? Be receptive about that.
Well, I'm not unreceptive. I'm not going to own it as my truth just because you feel that it's yours, which is totally fine. I'm not being reactive.
It's not yours. It's not ours. It's everybody's, because it became the community.
Every individual, yours, not you, yours. Like,
yeah, but in this time you're playing a game as a community, as an entity completely. So if the whole entity is seeing this particular aspect and reflecting upon it, didn't we say that we were going to consider that above any one-on-one reflection that anybody can have? We were going to honor the reflection of this big mirror, because what we have created here is a mirror that we said, according to what I understood from the very beginning, it's a big mirror that we're going to use because we know that we cannot trust one-on-one that deeply. So we use that big mirror to show us our own thing, because then it's not about one single person and what they have against you or what their opinions they have. Is the communal reflection on yourself,
which is comprised of multiple individual perspectives, which happen. Maybe, I don't think it's unanimous, but even if it is, it's like it happens to be similar, or it happens to be a unanimous decision. Like, I don't.
It doesn't need to get an answer. In this moment, I just like to ask Julian, what's your standpoint?
Celebration, and if celebration dissolves or not due to this, I truly don't feel like it unfolded in a very fluid way. I don't think it actually unfolded in a way that's truthful, because from my perspective, I think you, Sebastian, are coming from a place of your truth, and you're only trying to do the best. I mean, you've given up your entire being to have what we have here. Without you putting forward you as a whole person, we might not have even gotten this far. And then, I guess looking into how will celebration continue even after Sebastian leaves, for me, I'm going to continue to garden. I'm going to continue to hold that space as a community. Honestly, if everyone here leaves, I'll continue celebration on my own. Mm-hmm. I don't care. I don't care. I'm going to continue that message in my garden and continue that message throughout my life, because I've learned so much here. It's unfathomable. You can't even put it into fucking words. So, like, you either gonna come with me on this journey and like we're gonna continue as a group here, or everyone's gonna go do their own thing, and I will continue to keep the community alive, and I will continue to grow food, and I will find new people who will continue to enjoy life, because we're enjoying life. Everyone is, and I see that in each single one of you. Every single person, you're enjoying life. You're enjoying what we have here together. You're enjoying like this heaven on earth we fucking created by coming together. And like that's not gonna stop because I know it can manifest through me, doing and being. It can come through me, and I've already done that through the garden, and I'm gonna continue to do that because I know it's possible, and I know I've already been there. So that's how I feel, and that's like my core, and so. Celebration is never dead or gone to me. It's always there.
Thank you for that. Namaste. Thank you for owning your power.
Can I say something?
Yes.
You just said you're in heaven on earth that's being created here, which I agree. It's at least the potential for heaven on earth.
Mm.
And I feel like what's bigger than, okay, do you love, trust Sebastian, or do you and Hunter, whoever, I don't know all the details, whoever, does anybody not trust anybody? And if the answer is yes, that's one thing, but the bigger thing is, do you want to trust that person? Are you willing to do what it takes to build trust again? And if so, what does that look like? Because in creating heaven on earth, what better place to learn how to trust one another? Because is there going to be another time in your life where there's a potential you'll lose trust in somebody? Absolutely.
Yes.
Are there millions of people who have had trust broken and they've rebuilt it? Absolutely. So it's possible. It just comes down to if you're willing to or not.
Yes.
And if you're not willing to, then there's no point in trying to hold up a mirror to anybody because they're not going to do it. So I feel like that's really what comes down to is that you want to rebuild trust, and what does that look like? And also, if somebody doesn't want to, then it's to continue to poke at that point on somebody is only going to make it worse, and it's also going to be leaking your own energy instead of doing your own personal work. So.
Thank you for that.
I think I'm gonna do my check-in now. Thank you, Sal.
Thank you.
See you, bro. See you, love. Yeah. Diddy. I want to ask just popcorn questions. Not everybody has to go. Just very quickly, can anybody, if like Johnny comes, says what happened in celebration? Can anybody just say kind of like briefly what happened? Why did Sebastian leave? If that was the case. Anybody wanna?
I would say it's a choice. Like, it's totally conscious, whatever happens here, whatever each individual takes away from it. Like, we chose this, ultimately. Yeah, trust is a choice, ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
So we chose to stop, That's what it feels like.
Anybody else? Anybody else has like a brief summary of what happened?
Would you say it's a wound that couldn't be healed? Or wasn't given time to heal?
Maybe that you couldn't agree to disagree. People were all holding on to our own thing really hard. And that for whatever reason, these opposing views couldn't be simultaneously held.
We've been trying, honestly. That's the thing. It's this is an ongoing thing, and this is the climax of something that's been really going on since the beginning, honestly. And that inability to agree to disagree is really what it stems from.
Right.
The reason that nobody is willing or able to summarize very quickly, there will be misunderstandings, and that was the first flag I received this week. I came to realize through two persons that came forward towards me, which was Megs and Pax, when they had the time to reflect, and I came to realize that really nobody is understanding what's going on to the fullest. And because no one is truly able to understand and think it's more of a personal situation between me and love, or something like that, we're losing perhaps one of the biggest lessons that we can have as a community, which I had. It has come to me when I actually, as I said, I wrote a little paragraph when I intended, or put the intention in me to go into and say, okay, so what happened? What am I going to say when I'm going to put, when I'm going to leave? I'm going to put something on. We're going to put something on post on Instagram or something about me leaving, and what would I say? When I started looking into that, and through a chain of revelations and insights, what came up, it's truly meaningful. So I like to draw and be pictorial, but so you can start understanding the situation. So we have a circle, the yin and yang, right? You have the positive and the negative, and then you have the seed for the for each one of them and each one of them. So this is positive, this is negative, this is negative. So basically, you have two ways in which we are doing the world right now. So we either have democracy that, basically has up to now been dictatorship. It's a politics. So we have a dictator, we have a person that decides, a leader that decides what things need to be done. What is in the other side of this circle? What is the complete opposite to this? The complete opposite is anarchy. Anarchy and chaos. So we say we don't want to have a leader. We don't want to have a leader. And what is the reason of having a leader? Having a leader is because it makes the actual choice of making yes or no much easier. And keep also in mind the word council. A council of people. How does a council work? So with that said, you have the dictator and you have the chaos. Basically chaos. Either you are. That's how humanity has been fluctuating back and forth. But this time and age is required for something different, and the consciousness has been there to realize the third way. The third way is the middle way, right? And what is the middle way here between dictatorship and anarchy? It's consensus. It's taking every decision that needs to be made and brought up, and take whatever time is necessary to look into it impartially, non-personally, and say, and as a group, as an entity, come to a decision. Once a decision has been made, we go into it. So it's time consuming. It's our work. So what we're doing here, we're trying to come up with the third way to the world. We're demonstrating to the world that we don't need dictators and we don't need chaos. That we can actually, each one of us, be the leader of leadership. But in order to do that, something like this had to happen. In order to do that, for something like this, a crisis needed to happen. For somebody like Pax to speak in the way, as empowered way that she spoke, as empowered way that you're speaking, my clarity. So in this regard, we need to be aware of the center. So what I wrote about my little statement as of me leaving is, if I and I have a belief, is that unless we live in communion, humanity has no future in this world. If I and I have a belief, is that unless we live in communion, humanity has no future in this world. I'm going to define what a community is Communion is people living in close proximity, sharing on common levels of vulnerability. That's my own definition. So if I and I have a belief is that unless we live in communion, humanity has no future in this world. Communes that don't cater to the individual preferences, but take time to consensus, to the degree that is necessary to arrive to a decision of embracing all aspects, positive and negative. Meaning that prioritizes the well-being of the whole before accommodating for the individual preferences. These communes ought to be constituted by people that are willing to put the world altruism first and their personal preferences second. People who will not remain silent in the face of injustice. The incongruency between this statement and my experience in celebration is what right now is threatening my continuity here. I sent 2 years ago, tomorrow is going to be 2 years ago, I sent a letter, an email to everybody, and I have been mentioned throughout this. There's a very important aspect, an observation, an insight that I had and I shared with everybody. And it's called the Blessed Prisoner. And back then, with that email, did you have the chance to read it? Back then, the Blessed Prisoner is to have the responsibility of what we are coming here to do. And from the very beginning, we agree on this specific fact, not to cater to the individual preferences, not needs, preferences. So what is personal preference? I went deeper into it so that we can understand why personal preference should not be honored in organisms like this. Because remember, we cannot have a dictator, we cannot have anarchy. So we need to surrender something, and that's the personal preferences, so that what we see as a whole is the where we decide to move. And not until we know for sure where we're moving, we're not taking a step. So what is personal preferences? In every situation in life, you have two possibilities. There's the path of least resistance, and there's something new. You know, an experience that is a difficult. So you have the path of least resistance and the other possibility, just to make it simple. Preference means that you have. Preference is what is the known. It's something that you have known. And therefore you prefer it. It's like when you go to a Starbucks and you always get a vanilla latte or whatever you get, and you don't try anything else just because that's what you like and you go with it. And that's your personal preference, and nobody has a right to say anything about it. In this world, no, there's no partiality. You have the right, and that's your free will. But when it comes to us perceiving this earth, Gaia, as an organism, as a living organism, and us being the neurons of this organism, being the cells, the constituting cells of this organism, then we come to realize that the survival of the whole organism is tied up directly with our own survival. And what happens, what is a cancer? If you see what is a cancer, these are the examples that life is giving us. Even a tumor in the brain. What is a tumor in the brain? Nothing else but a cell that decided, I'm going to do my own thing. You know, I want to grow something here, and it just starts to grow and eventually threatens the whole organism, like what is happening now. You know? So personal preference is choosing the path of least resistance. So what happens is that you have, this is what you know, this is your known, your circle. This is where you're rotating. You're rotating right here in your circle. This is what you know, and you have your preferences, and you have your, personal preferences. You have your dreams. Like, for example, you have this thing with this company, like Men's has the thing with Lisa and things like that. Things that they're, that they had a perception of how their life is going to look, and that fits into that perception. So that's my personal preference, and that's wonderful. You can continue rotating in here. But remember that every choice has either your personal preference or the harder part. But what does that hard part represent? What is the hardship of it? Is that the unknown. So whatever, to the smallest degree to the biggest degree, that little unknown that you didn't consider before is this little bit, 1 centimeter, let's say. That thing that you didn't know. When you take a choice when you have two choices and you pick the hardest choice, something new comes into your life. Something that you experience, something that you have never experienced before, and you add this centimeter into here. What happens to the whole circumference? Expands, right? Expands. So you are becoming wider, wiser, wider, because you're confronting situations that are harder. So personal preference, if the whole group is moving somewhere, but that's not where you prefer it to be, surrender comes. Because you're trusting already this group of people that is moving somewhere, and you decided to go along. But if you change your mind somewhere in the way and start cutting, because what has been happening for the past 2 months, we started cutting to the individual preferences. In every way, in every little way, it started just creeping up. The politeness started creeping up, and we didn't want to cause too much pain to that person, or we didn't want to confront, or we started internalizing things. And we were not getting the feedback out there if what we were internalizing was real or not. So then we started, so that's what's happening. So what I internalize, this is my understanding, and because I don't have a trusting way of really compare this with anybody else, I have to make decisions. I have to, stand in my ground, or leave celebration, or do this or do that. So really, if we want to have, a communion, if there is to be a communion, people need to be their own agents. And how do you find them? Like what happened last weekend to me was one of the most beautiful things that celebration has given to me. And it's a soul sister. Someone that will not cater to their own personal preferences. In that moment, Lydia was going through the fact that she's going to lose Panther, she's going to lose the situation of living here, but she will not stand for hypocrisy. She will not stand because she has seen that personal preference is not the way to go. Right now, we're not called to live our own little personal lives. The whole mothership is dying, and it's being raped by those motherfuckers, by a group of people that are organized doing it and raping it. The scientists. What do scientists, the difference between scientists, we have scientists, and we see where do scientists come together? They come together on discipline. They have gone through discipline. They have put effort, and after they have come to that, then, results happen. Are we, the people with the consciousness, we need that discipline. We have experienced love, we have experienced trust to a certain degree, but we have forgotten the third ingredient, which is, to me, at the beginning it came to me as discipline, but I realized that left after each one of us, we don't have any discipline. I didn't experience much discipline here. So it's not discipline that is needed in communities. What we're trying to find out is what works in communities. So it's not discipline, it's accountability. We didn't have accountability. You need people to take care of the gardens. We need to grow food. We need to be consistent. If you stop weeding it or let the lettuce go flower, it's gone. All your effort is gone. And that's sort of what has been happening. Love, trust, and accountability is what creates harmony. Accountability with one another. Like the day on the retreat, you might have not noticed, you might have not felt for you that leaving a particular activity itself was a big deal or anything, but we realized that you were cutting to your own personal preference at that moment. You prefer not to deal with certain things, or you prefer to deal in the thing in the way that you're used to do things instead of doing it as a community.
Time check, you've been talking for a long time, and we have an hour until those two are going to leave. So
Okay, thank you.
let's let other people.
4, I guess.
No, 3 minutes.
That's something pretty important to talk about, but I'd like to
Finish.
wrap up whatever you have to say so we're not leaving anything.
And I'd like to fill in a couple of pieces to what you're saying too. So
Yes.
time to
Do you want to say it now?
Sure. There was a retreat center that I lived at for several years in California, and it was all based around the way of counsel. And pretty much what you're talking about is the way of counsel, which is the Native American tradition of resolving any issue, which comes down to consensus. But a big part of counsel for the natives was the next 7 generations. Every single, even the example of you go to Starbucks and you get a latte and that's your free will to do it. Well, not really. I mean, yes, it is, but also you have to understand the responsibility, which you can't have accountability without responsibility. So if you've got something to be responsible about and you're not doing it, then you can be held accountable. And for us, our responsibility is taking care of this planet right now and making sure that the next 7 generations it's going to be taken care of for as well. So if going to Starbucks and getting a latte is going to put that sometime, in the ocean somewhere, you can't do that. It doesn't work for the next 7 generations. So really being intentional about the bigger picture and yes, like you're saying, getting rid of the personal preferences and going, all right, well, maybe it is easier to, do this, but it's not going to be the most beneficial for the collective. Then, I have to be held accountable for that and go, hey, maybe you shouldn't drive in this crazy gas guzzling vehicle when we're all here in hybrid. Like, come along with us. There's a lot of different levels for that, but really being clear on our impact far beyond this lifetime, I think is very important for any time we should counsel in this way, and making sure that we are all looking at our own personal responsibilities, and then making sure that we're held accountable, and when we are held accountable and someone steps to us, we're receptive to them.
Yes.
So just wanted to throw that in.
So, thank you for that. Thank you very much. So what happened last week is that I found a sister and I had also found a brother. These are people, to me, why is it so important? Is because these people have embodied the agency. They are agents unto themselves. They have, and that's something that, if I'm not mistaken, this is something that you have crossed recently. Lydia. Based on all of this, in my opinion, I discovered it through all of this. That symbol of being able to renounce and detach yourself and renounce the outcome of the situations by standing up by the side of truth, that's what it counts. That's being an agent. Same thing that what you're doing right here, you are being an agent. What you brought about and the way you brought about is you have embodied that warrior spirit which we have been lacking. And you're standing for what you see and what you perceive, and you calling things out. That has not been happening. Same thing with you. You are doing it now. So then those pillars, whereas before, we started this and it was a fuzziness. But if for the sake of time, and I don't want to extend this with being so concerned about my words, but there has been some leadership from me. There has been. You have perceived it, not direct, but you have seen that there is something that has happened, like a little spinal cord, which I hold that space. Every time there was a new thing coming, like when Megs was gonna bring about the thing about going to Lisa, I was like, here it is. This is something that I'm seeing. So what does that mean? It's like, first of all, there's 2 things that always need to be voiced. What you perceive as the center and what would you prefer. I consider that that's the way of really going about these things. It's like, okay, So said it in the statement, being able to conceive open-mindedly, non-personalizing what is being as a console to explore every situation that decision is going to intake. And then from there, move on. But the first thing, we need to trust each other that the first thing that they're doing, they have the well-being of this entity in mind. That's the first thing. That's where they want to get to the center. So there's actually three things: where they want to be, where we are, and their preference. In between these things, a shape is created. That's the area where we all agree. You know, we are intending to find the truth. We consensus and we all try to get as close to it as possible, and then we have our personal preferences. Let's see how we are with those, you know, and then we move on. But the moment you start letting and being quiet about letting someone go with their personal preference, like for example what you call in Julian right now, when it was about, yes, you have the personal preference of going out there. You know that out there you can, you know, these are things that are going to help you in your life. It's a financial situation.
Just want to make sure you're not going off on.
Yes,
I'm not
it
trying
needs
to
to be.
interrupt.
I asked for 30 minutes, so I need to be able to. But thank you. I embrace it. So what has happened, as I said, there was a spinal cord, and of course, when I brought about, I was looked as I was trying to get my way. Oh, Sebastian is bringing out this thing, the negative aspect. For example, the day that we went about going to Lisa's, I mentioned, you know, like we're gonna have this very organized working period, but we haven't had ever since a working period that's organized here. This is our present moment. Over there is the future. And you're putting the future before taking care of the present moment. Yes, we can integrate both things, but in the moment, what I was saying, what I was coming about, it was not my personal preference, my intention. Simply, it's like, hey, I'm bringing about this, but then everybody is like, oh, what do you mean? Like you're trying to get your way. Everybody is like, oh, Sebastian is speaking. Sebastian is not yielding, but it's not personal. You were internalizing something, but as of now, and therefore, that's the particular aspect. That last meeting, when I said that if the trust that is between love, if love cannot see the clarity and the trust that how I'm putting all of this in here and nobody else sees it, then I'm wasting my time here. But then the realization was to recognize the complexity of this, that we haven't looked deeper enough to see that we people were not understanding. And as of now, based on what has happened and what, you know, for example, the reason I mentioned, you know, YouTube, is that with YouTube, I know that I'm not going into a situation like this. I know there's already three pillars. There's already Lydia, there's Zach, and there's me. And these three pillars are going to create this tension, you know, the agents, you know, creating that tension and holding each other and knowing that here's where we're going. We are not putting a personal preference. So crossing that line and coming to that point where you have that kind of trust that I have for these people, you know, from that trust, I know that everything is possible. You know, that I can trust these people absolutely and put my life at risk for them for whatever reason, because I know that they cannot go astray. You know, knowing for certain that someone cannot go astray is very important. And I'm saying going astray is when you hear it talk in reggae music, is that consciously you're acting against the whole earth. You cannot go astray. I know that these people cannot go astray. I know I cannot go astray. So that's the tension and that's the power that these kinds of things happen. That is the tension between all of these players that are regarded. So far it was only kind of like a triangle kind of thing, and you know, maybe like a tent with only one pole. But the whole emphasis has been that we all need to be a pole into this tent and create the tension. Otherwise, you know, it's going to be fluffy. If you imagine each one of us grabbing a corner, as I said, as pressing many times, and dropping a ball, for that ball to fall in the center, we all have to have the same tension of all the sides. So we need to uphold our truth, our perception, and we need to be and hold each other accountable. You're going off. And if it comes a point, like in a situation where an organism develops a cancer and the cancer is threatening one limb, taking that decision, is this limb going to compromise this whole thing, or are we ready to cut the limb? So it's that definitiveness that we need to be clear. And yes, we love people, and we need to be clear. It's not about love, not stopping to love them. It's that, okay, if you want to cut it to your personal preference, we have agreed that here we're not doing that. If you want to do it on your own. And in that way, and we will always be supporting. You can be part of the inner circle, and you can be completely, because the love is always there. But compromising this whole thing, this mission that we have to prove to humanity that we can live together, is very sensitive. And if we don't put our complete self, we're not going to make it as a humanity. Because so far, if you think about it, so far it's been up to them. Up to the people in power, up to the people. If we're going to let them continue to do what they're doing, they're going to run the planet down. So it's up to us to make the change that this world needs. And we know that. But embracing that and living up to that is a decision that you need to make. And it's a decision that we all here need to make. And then after realizing the level of misunderstanding that has transpired in the last meeting, the level of misunderstanding has happened with this whole crisis, me taking that decision, because I didn't hear anybody say what you said that last meeting. It was, yes, I appreciate you and things like that, but you knew, you had been there through the whole process to see where the pitfalls are. And I know that each one of you trusts their own intuition and knows where things have gone. So whether we decide to allow it or not is the decision that we need to move from here. Is celebration, even do we have this goal? Is people willing to commit to that, to being those agents, and therefore spreading up this responsibility that has unfortunately fallen upon my shoulders, and I have been desperately trying to share with all of us, because I know that's for sure the only way to go. So, and it has been for me. It's like you have even seen it to me that, yes, the way that I come across sometimes might be like a New Yorker. Like I don't go beating about bush, and I know because of time's sake, it's not for not caring, but it's for time's sake, is that we need to be sincere with one another. We need to be clear with each other, and we need to trust each other. So what has transpired from then to here is that I have seen the confusion, and if celebration is not to continue, then the complex thing is that I will be myself catering to an individual preference. Mm-hmm. That's the complexity of it. You see it. Mm-hmm. Because the decision was really not on love, the decision was on the commune. If we were able to speak and stand up for what it was just, it was not between us, the two. It was the community saying, like, okay, we cannot move forward, like what Paxis was saying. We cannot move forward until we resolve this, and we can resolve it. And we can trust each other, and we can love each other. So for me, it's the decisive factor right now. It has changed because I am not going to sacrifice this incredible thing, knowing that it's going to go downhill. Because I feel that if we don't uphold that tension, if we don't uphold become agents ourselves, no matter who comes, things are it's just going to be a living situation, and that's what me and Lydia are not wanting to be. We don't want to be in a kind of like a fraternity thing or like a living situation, because we know there's further work to be done, and that living in community takes a lot of time. There's a lot of distraction that happens to us, so we need to have that accountability as well. So then, because of this, my take on this is that if I need to see who here is willing to be an agent, who here is willing to uphold that vibration that we are called to uphold, because it's a vibration that we need to uphold. Right now, nobody else is doing it, and it requires for us to sacrifice that personal preference to uphold that. And it's somewhere that we cannot go below. If we go below, this happens, and we lost the time and we lost the effort that we put into this. We need to become the agents and uphold the frequency that we are creating, so that as it grows, it becomes sacred geometry. There were 3 people, like perhaps seeing it right now. Pax is over here, and Julian is over here. Somebody else is over here. Then we create more and more complex shapes and beauty by upholding that tension.
And I jumped in because what you said, Conrad, played right into something that when I first really knew that there was any issue happening here, and this was when Sebastian and I spoke when we went camping a little while ago, and there's just a word kept coming through over and over and over again, and I finally shared with Sebastian, and it's coming up again, and you speak of the agents, and agents hold that geometry, and that geometry creates the foundation, which then creates the nest or the container for people to become agents. Just because somebody is not an agent doesn't mean that they're not going to be an agent at some point in time. And I feel like the way to assist somebody in becoming an agent is compassion. And so your comments of going, I hope you guys still see me as a brother, even though I want to leave, that should never even be a question in your mind. Because absolute compassion for you, wherever you are, even if someone doesn't think you're an agent or someone doesn't think that you're whatever, no matter what anybody looks at anybody in a certain way, as long as you can hold compassion for them, you are being an agent and you are allowing that other person to be in their most highest state to become who they are. I like to look at things like children. You don't see a child, drop something that they're carrying and you get all over them and you scream at them, or they trip and fall when they're learning to walk, and then you get all over their case. No, you get up and you help them and you encourage them and you have compassion for them to learn, because they're going to learn. Everyone's going to learn how to walk at some point in time. So I feel like one thing that's happening as I just sit back from being an observer here is that everybody's learning to walk. Some people are better at walking than others, but the only thing that's going to assist everybody being the best of who they are is for each person to have compassion for one another. And without that, there's not really, I think, a way for it to really succeed. So I would really encourage everyone to look in the mirror and say, am I holding this whole situation and these individuals in the highest level of compassion possible? And am I also holding myself with that same level of compassion? And if anything comes up with that, I think that's a beautiful one-on-one conversation to have with somebody to express, how they may not have been fully holding that compassion.
Thank you so much, man. Zach. That was
Welcome.
that rang my bells a lot.
That's a great one.